Hey everyone. All right, we're talking about chapter 5 with Brendon on radiant relief, which is a fabulous new disruptive way of getting rid of that pain that's been bugging you. All right, chapter 5, Brendon, the safest, most consistently effective and appealing solution to the epidemic of chronic pain. Unveil it for us already. Tell us,
Yeah.
what is it?
Well, we do a few things, but obviously the key focus, which we've kind of talked about in this book, is using a technology, an FDA-cleared technology that allows us to retrain the brain and restore it back to a more normal perception of pain rather than just masking it at the tissue level. So the way that the technology works, and I'll talk a little bit more about our care model as well, because it really is, like I mentioned before, it's built and designed to create the best chance for successful experience and outcomes for our clients. But the way the technology works, essentially it acts like an artificial nerve, and it generates a dynamic set or a changing set of artificial nerve impulses that more or less mimic, they're kind of a replica of what exists in us naturally when we don't have chronic pain. Essentially, it's a healthy no pain nerve signal, or something that's very akin to that Professor Marineo was able to basically create these replications, these algorithms that replicate these nerve signals. So we identify with the client where their pain is, and we actually attach electrodes outside of the pain, but in proximity to the painful area. So just for example, if it's the hand that hurts, it could be almost anything. Going back to your question earlier, it can be arthritis, it can be neuropathy, it could be shingles pain. It almost really doesn't matter. And again, if it's chronic, it's a problem of the brain. So we attach electrodes on the skin, typically, again, in proximity. So it'd be on the arm or on the back, someplace between the pain site and the spine, and hop in line between where the brain is and where the pain is felt, and basically hop in line and send up new information through the nervous system. The brain receives it, interprets it as a self message, and it almost immediately begins to reduce the pain experience in the body. And then because the messaging is dynamic and changing, the brain has to work to interpret this and to understand it. And essentially, this is what triggers and drives the neuroplastic change, and through repetition and exposure. So in the first session, which we give for free, we can typically get a noticeable level of relief. But the process of changing the brain, like anything the brain is learning, how to ride a bicycle, how to speak Spanish, algebra, it's a process of repetition and exposure. So typically the client experience will be a daily session for about an hour, about 40 minutes on the device, but about an hour of their time every day, Monday through Friday, for 2 or 3 weeks. As they come through that process, their pain experience typically gets less and less, with longer and longer duration of relief, until sometime typically around the 2nd to 3rd week, the brain is really locked onto this new messaging, and it's created new neural pathways, and the relief then becomes what we call durable or lasting for weeks or months, and in some cases even indefinite at that point. But the expectation that we set for our clients is they'll need to come back in periodically for a booster course, or a booster treatment, like a refresher course. If you don't practice your algebra or your Spanish, you begin to forget it. And so the brain will go back to those old pain wirings, those neural pathways, if we don't kind of reinforce that in many cases. So we set the expectation, and we sell our therapy on an annual membership so that clients can have access to it as they need it throughout the year. And even though they may be in there every day for the first few weeks, we can, if they sign up for it and pay it on the annual membership, they can push that cost out over the year, making it much more affordable to them. And as I mentioned, on average, it's about $10 a day when you average it across the year's time. And so when you think of it in those terms, even though it doesn't have insurance coverage, to get your life back and to get functioning, to get a higher level is very much worth it.
So it is an annual membership. You don't set it up as a monthly subscription plan or a quarterly plan. You are asking for an annual commitment up front.
Yeah, but most of the time the clients are very fine with that. We give the first treatment for free. We work with them, and they see the value. And we also tell them, look, one of our core values is doing the right thing. And so we look at doing the right thing as 2 things. Number one, doing everything we can to get you to start, to help you get started, because it's really in that process that you're going to see the benefit. Secondarily, though, is if you aren't seeing that progress, the membership price includes 20 sessions. and additional sessions can be purchased while they're on the membership for only $35 a session. So it's negligible, fairly inexpensive cost if they need additional treatments beyond 20. But we'll say, look, we'll work with you for those first 20 sessions. And if we don't see a noticeable improvement, we'll let you out of the membership and we just retain a very
Got
small
it.
percentage of that cost.
And what are the prices? Let's actually dive into the actual numbers themselves.
Yeah. Well, when we started, to your point, like we didn't know exactly how to package this and how to price it. And so we had two options: pay each time you come in. And the price that we realized we kind of needed to be at from a business standpoint was about $250 a session. So that can add up. So we realized, well, if we can sell a package of 10, because we knew it was a process of ongoing, we sold a package of 10 for $2,000. So a 20% discount. And most patients that, especially after the first free treatment, they're like, wow, this is great. I'm willing to spend, $2,000 to try to get my pain contained and get my life back. And so we sold a lot of packages of 10 treatments early on. But what we found is that 10 became the magic number in somebody's mind, right? And if they got better before 10, they're like, well, what about these other ones? I paid for 10. Do I get a refund? And we'll say, well, you probably need them in the future for a booster, so let's bank them. Or they needed more than 10. And then they're like, well, I thought 10 was going to solve my pain. And if 10 was the right number for them, then they would go up back living their life, and they would delay coming back in for a booster because they didn't want to buy another package of 10 or start each one. So with the membership, what it's done is it's improved our outcomes because people just can access it when they need it. And it allows us to push that cost out over an entire year's time, making it much more affordable to everybody. So that's why we've modeled that way. It's $3,500 is how we have it priced for the annual membership. Again, that includes 20 sessions. And you think, well, $3,500 for a lot of people is a lot of money. It is, I fully recognize that. But I can tell you that most of our clients tell us it's the best investment they've ever made. And, again, breaking it into monthly payments is fairly affordable. And if you divide $3,500 by 365 days, it's about $10 a day. So, you start thinking in those terms, and, the option to opt out after the first few weeks, if you really aren't seeing improvement, which rarely happens. I mean, our clients are typically so ecstatic about the response they're getting that it's pretty clear that it's the right decision.
A very exciting opportunity, clearly, for a lot of people. But, as I listen to you, it's obvious to me that it's not going to work for everyone with all kinds of pain. It's going to very specifically work for those where pain is becoming a quality of life issue. Meaning, if I can pop an aspirin and get rid of it, I'm not investing in this.
Right. Yeah.
This is for people where aspirin isn't doing it. Or to your point now, I've ended up in this opioid crisis issue where I'm like downing them by the dozen.
Yeah.
And it's starting to have side effects. And so.
Yeah, most of our clients have been in pain for years or decades, and they have tried everything in their mind. And there is some level of significant disruption to their life. And I can think of, if you go to our website and, we only use actual clients, no stock imagery, and we have phenomenal stories of life reclaimed. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of, and something that we're very intentional about. How do we, now that we've opened this door back to health, what do we do to help somebody go, improve? Somebody was just saying, it's kind of like they've been in prison. And I'm like, yeah, they've been trapped in their bodies. And so we've released them from prison, but we have to rehabilitate them into a world that's back to normal so they can function in it. And so, later we'll talk about that. But, I can think of one guy in particular. He minor injury, broke a bone in his foot. It was misdiagnosed. It didn't heal properly. He was given medications and prescribed, physical rehab. Those things didn't really resolve his pain. He just kept getting more and more dosing of medications. They tried injections, a series of different injections. Those didn't resolve his pain. He was then either operated on his foot, trying to correct whatever, perceived pathology or real pathology issues they thought were happening. That didn't resolve the pain. He then was given a spinal cord stimulator. So this is an implanted medical device that stimulates the spine and the nerves. It's an invasive procedure. And they implant, the device aspect of it into the buttocks of the body. They didn't implant it into the buttocks. So then the trial, they just put it into the spine then see how he does. And so he didn't respond from that. And so now he's like, what do I do? And so he realized he was addicted to opioids. He put himself through rehab and went through this whole hassle and was just so discouraged. He finally fed up. This is now after probably 6, 7, 8 years of this, went to his doctors and said, I can't live with this pain in my leg. I want you to amputate my leg. So he chose to have his leg amputated. The poor guy. They chop his leg off. It doesn't resolve the pain. because it's really not about the tissue. It's a problem of the brain. And so now he's, he tells us now retrospectively that he was at this point very, suicidal, because it's like, what do you do when your body has betrayed you so much and nothing is resolving this? Fortunately, he didn't take his life. He was able to come in to see us. We restored him back to a really normal level of function. And he tells his story, and he just gets so emotional, being able to play with his grandkids and have his life back. And that's a dramatic example, but it's not unlike what we see. But you're right. I mean, someone that has, a periodic, sore muscle from playing tennis isn't going to come in here, or something that's not, not significant. And we model the business to get people thinking about their why, because sometimes they've become distracted from distance, I guess is a better word, distance from who they really are, like the things that bring them joy and productivity and connection. And we want them thinking about those things, because if they've lost those things because of pain, those are the people that we really want to help.
And I would think that athletes would be a great target audience as well, professional athletes.
Yeah,
They're
send
just
them our way.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, if you see Joe Montana, he doesn't make too many television appearances anymore. But the poor guy can barely walk. His body, and all these professional athletes, they push themselves so much. Their bodies after these careers, in many cases, are crippled, right? And poor Joe is at a place. So if you see him, like he's in tough shape. And yeah, I think that we can help a lot of people begin, because just like anybody, if you start taking medications, there's going to be side effects inevitably. Your body's going to become tolerant to them. You have to keep upping your dosing. There's some disruption to sleep and function and cognitive impairment, and all of that snowballs and compounds and becomes very, very complicated for a lot of people. So those are the people we want to help, and to see them, to be able to address like this. They come in this big, complicated bundle of conditions, and to be able to extract out a key component of this, probably the initial component in many cases, which is the pain, get them feeling better. They can then get off of medications. And they want to. I mean, that's one of their goals many times, is to reduce or eliminate the medication loads they're on. And as they do that, they start to feel better globally. They become different people again. And it's a really beautiful thing to be a part of that.